guys, here we are on part 3 of our Math Common Assessment review. Hopefully this is the last one. Alright, they wanted us, we are now moving into rounding with decimals, and they wanted us to use the table to round to the given places, label the number lines, and circle the rounded value. So here's the number that they wanted us to start with. We have 8 and 546,000. 8 and 546,000. We say thousands because the 6 ends in the thousandths place. They want us to take this number and round it to the hundredths place. Alright, well if we take that number and we round it to the hundredths place, right now we have a 4 sitting in the hundredths place. And when we round, we want to circle the place they're asking us to round to. So they asked us to round to the hundredths. I'm going to circle the hundredths place. Then we always want to look at the digit to the right of it. I have a 6 here. So what I've told people in the past, think of this. We know everything in front of the place that we're rounding to is going to stay the same. So our 8 and our 5 right here, they're going to stay the same because we're rounding to the hundredths place, so it's not going to affect these digits. And I want you to take these numbers and kind of pull them out, and let's think of it as the number 46, okay? Because kind of think of it as having 46,000. We have to decide what two tens is 46 in between. So if I'm skip counting by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, what two tens does 46 come in between? Well, it comes in between 40 and it comes in between 50. So 46 falls in between the two tens, 40 and 50. I know halfway between 40 and 50 is 45. So now I'm going to mark 46 on my number line. 46 is going to be right here, right above our 45. So if I use my vertical number line to help me round, I can see that 46 is closer to 50 than it is to 40. So 46 is going to round to 50. So if we take this number and round to the hundredths place, my 400ths is going to bump up to a 500. So my answer would be 8 and 5, because my 4 rounded up to a 5, so 855 hundredths. We rounded to the hundredths place, and our 4 went up to a 5 because of this 6 right here behind it. This 6,000 bumped it up to your 500. And we looked at it right here on the number line. They want us to take that same number, but this time they want us to round to the tens place. So I'm going to erase this off of my chart so I can use it again. And this time they're wanting us to round to the tens place. Wait a minute, Miss Talbert. There's no digits in the tens place. You're right, but we do have 8 1. So let's talk about that. Let's think about the number 8. And if I was going to put 8 on my number line, it comes in between 0, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if we're talking about tens here, it's either 0 tens or it's 1 10. We have 8 1s. Well, halfway between 0 and 10 is going to be 5. My 8 is going to be right here. And I can see that 8 is definitely closer to 10 than it is to 0. So if we round this to the tens place, our 8 1s is just going to bump up to 10. So our answer when rounding to the tens place is just 10 because 8 is closer to 110 than it is 0. Let's go on to the next slide. Round the quantity to the given place. Draw number lines to explain your thinking. Circle the value on the number line. So we're going to take this number, 13 and 989 thousandths, and round it to the tenths place. I'm going to type it here. We make it a little bit bigger. So we have 13 and 989 thousandths. They want us to round this to the tenths place. Well, here's my decimal. The first place to the right of the decimal is always the tenths place. So I'm going to circle that, and I always want to look at the number behind it to help me figure out what I need to do. So we're going to take these two numbers right here. We're going to kind of pull them out of our number. Remember, I told you everything in front of the place that you're rounding to stays the same. So our 13 is not going to change, but our numbers back here, we're going to do some work on those. So I want you to think of it as having the number 98, having 98 hundredths. And we have to decide what is 98 hundredths closer to. If we're counting by tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, where is that going to fall in between? So when we're skip counting, it's either going to be between 90 or 100. Remember, we're thinking this as hundredths, so we either have 98 hundredths or 100 hundredths. Halfway in between is going to be 95. So I'm going to put that in the middle of my vertical number line. Now we need to put 98 on our number line to see what it is closer to. 95, 96, 97, 98 would be right here. And I can see that 98 is going to round up to 100. But how do we do that right here? Excellent question. So we know that this 98 would bump up, like we said, to 100. Well, that 100, we can't just put 100 right here because that changes the value. If you have 100 or if you have 10 tenths, that's going to bump you up to your next whole number right here. So when this 8 changes to a 9, think of it as carrying that 1 over, just like we would do in addition. So when we round this to the nearest tenth, it actually changes our answer to 14 wholes because my 9 goes up to a 10 and we carry that 1 over to give me 14 wholes. Now we're going to take this number and we're going to round it to the hundredths place. So I have 382 and 993 thousandths. And they want us to take it and put it to the hundredths place. So here's my tenths, here's my hundredths. This is the place we're rounding to. So I want to look at it and the number behind it. Remember, everything, we're not touching these right now unless we need to. But now we're going to take this out as 93 together. Let's go ahead and draw our number line. 93 thousandths is the number we are working with. I know from this over here that 93 is going to come either in between 90 or 100. And halfway between there is going to be 95. Now let's put 93 on our number line. 93 would be about right here. Sorry, that's crazy looking. That's supposed to be a 9. And I can see that 93 is closer to 90 than it is 100. So this actually rounds down to 90. So my final answer here would be 382 and 990 thousandths. There is my final answer. Our 93 stayed at 90 because it wasn't enough to bump it up. Alright, hang in there with me. We are almost finished. Now we're going to practice adding, and this is what we did in our small groups yesterday. So they gave it to us in word form. We have 4 hundredths, so no tenths, but 4 hundredths, plus 8 hundredths. Again, no tenths, but I do have 8 hundredths. So if we add that together, that's going to give me, what is 8 plus 4? Well, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That gives me 12 hundredths. And 12 hundredths is the same, there's our 12 hundredths, as having 1 tenth and 2 hundredths. So 12 hundredths is the same as 1 tenth and 2 hundredths. I literally took it in word form, wrote it in standard form, and just added them together. I did that mentally in my head. So look right here. Now we have 64 hundredths. So 64, I need my 4 to land in the hundredths place, and it does, plus 8 hundredths. I don't have any tenths, but I have 8 hundredths. So now I'm going to come to this side, and Miss Talbert told me when we add or subtract decimals, we have to line up our decimal. It must be in line or we will get it wrong. So my decimals are in line. Now I'm ready to add 8 plus 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, put my 2, carry my 1. So now I have 6 plus 1 plus 0, which gives me 7. Notice in my answer, my decimal must also be in line. So the whole way up my problem, all of my decimals must be stacked one on top of the other. That is super duper important. And then last I have 0 plus 0, which is 0. So that gave me 72 hundredths, which is the same thing as having 7 tenths and 2 hundredths. They gave it to us horizontal here. What I want you to do is rewrite it vertically, going up and down. So I have 2 and 4 tenths, or 40 hundredths, plus 1 and 8 tenths. Your decimals must be stacked, one on top of the other. See right here? They are in line together. And it must be in the same spot in your answer as well. So the whole way down my problem, my decimals are in line. Notice right here, I don't have anything. It just told me 1 and 8 tenths. But I can fill in my placeholder, and that will help me when I am adding these numbers together. So now, let's just add like we normally would, starting over here and go place by place. 0 plus 0 is 0. 8 plus 4 is 12. We're going to put our 2. Carry our 1 over just like we do in normal addition. Then I have 2 plus 1 plus 1. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 1 more gives me 4. So 4 and 2 tenths, or 4 and 20 hundredths. Let's look at this one. 36 and 25 hundredths. Plus, I got a little crazy, plus 8 and 67 hundredths. Remember, the most important part here is to line up your decimals. So I'm going to put my decimal first. In front of my decimal, I have an 8. Behind it, I have 67 hundredths. My decimals are in line. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my answer so it is in line in my answer as well. 7 plus 5 is going to give me 12. Put my 2, carry my 1. 2 plus 6 plus 1. Well, 2 plus 1 is 3. 6 plus 3 gives me 9. Now I have 8 plus 6. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Put my 4, carry my 1. And then 3 plus 1 is 4. So our final answer here is 44 and 92 hundredths. Again, the biggest thing that you must remember is you have to put your decimals in line. Make sure they are in line the whole way down when adding and subtracting. All right, on our last slide, we are doing the same thing that we have been doing, but we are now subtracting them. So on this first one, we have 1 and 7 tenths. And we want to take away 8 tenths. You must line up your decimals. I can fill in my 0 for my placeholder. Uh-oh, what do we notice here? If we have 7 on top, we cannot take 8 away from the bottom. So we're going to borrow just like we would. Go next door. That 1 becomes a 0. My 7 is now a 17. And I can do 17 minus 8. 17 minus 8. is going to give me 9. My decimal must be in line in my answer, and 0 minus 0 is 0. So that gives me 9 tenths. 9 tenths. And right here we would do the same thing, making sure that we line up our decimals. The biggest thing is to make sure your decimals are in line. Don't worry about getting the digits perfectly. Notice there's an empty space right here, and that's okay. We're going to fill it in with a placeholder as 0. My decimals are in line. It's going to be in line in my answer, and I am now ready to subtract. 7 minus 0 is 7. Uh-oh. Let me change my color for this part. So 7 minus 0 is 7. I can't do 3 minus 6, so I'm going to borrow. Go next door. I borrow from my 6. I don't have 6 tenths anymore. Now I have 5. But my 3 can become a 13. That's going to allow me to subtract. 13 minus 6 gives me 7. And 5 minus 5 is 0. I already have my decimal in line with the other decimals. They're stacked, one on top of the other. Now I'm ready to keep subtracting. 4 minus 8. Can't do that, so I must borrow again. My 8 goes down to a 7. My 4 becomes a 14. 14 minus 8 is going to give me 6, and 7 minus 2 is going to give me 5. I hope you find these videos useful. Good luck on your math